In this table, we will learn about the derived table. It's basically a subquery that will always appear as part of a from sentence. Let's see an example. Present the order ID, order date with max unit price for each order. So we see that the order ID is a column from the orders table. The order date is a column from the orders table. And we need from the order details the max unit price for each order ID. Now, we will the derived table that is aggregated field and create it as a one row for each order ID. After that, we will join it to the orders table that there we know we have one row for each order ID. So the thing that we need to remember when joining between two tables, that we want to have a column that is related to each other as an order ID. We have order ID in the order details and order ID in the orders table. And we do it in OD order ID equals to O order ID. One of them is the aggregate field, so we have one row for each order ID, and from the orders we have also one row because the order ID is primary key, is unique. Eventually we have order ID, let's say 10,248, that the maximum price is from the order detail and the order date is from the orders table. And the connection between them needs to be one to one. The important note is to connect between the derived table and the joined table, we need to make sure the table have connection of one-to-many or one-to-one. So in this case, we have one-to-one. Order ID will be unique and the order ID in the orders will be unique. But we can also connect between them if here we have many and in the orders table we have one. So the connection has to be one-to-one or one-to-many. We need to remember it. We can't connect between two tables that are many-to-many because we learned about it. It will have a Cartesian product. Let's see it in the SQL Server. Now let's separate between them and see what we have. So select asterisk from the order table, order details. When running it, we see that we have the order ID multiple times. Now let's extract what we need. We need order ID and we need the unit price. When running it, we get what we need. We need order ID and unit price, but we have multiple rows. What we need and what we asked for is the maximum unit price. So for this, let's do max as max unit price. When we do aggregate field, we need to add group by. So group it by the order ID. For each of the orders, we have the max unit price. Now it's one value for each order ID, one row. The next thing we have select asterisk from the orders table. We need the orders table because we want the order date. The order date we have it only on the orders table. Here we already have the order ID as unique value because it's primary key. So this value will appear only once. From here we want the order date. So we have the order date. If we run this, we have one row for each order ID and its order date. Now we want to combine between them in join. So we'll have the order ID, order date, and the max unit price. So let's combine them, and the way we're going to do it is, first of all, to understand that we want the order ID and order date from the orders, and we want to join it with the column with the data of order ID. The way we start with it is to understand that we need these columns. We have select, and we need the column that max unit price. This is the column that we want from. Now we want it from the derived table. Let's call it OD. But we need to join it with the orders table in order to have the order date. How we do it? We do join, and we don't need the from because we join with them and orders. Let's call it O. Let's understand it better. What we do, we have the query and we join it with other query, with other table. We can do it because the orders is a primary key. We connect with them with order ID. It's primary key, so we just can connect them. If it wasn't primary key, we need to add a query with a select and connect it to a select query. So to understand if it's a primary query and we want to connect with the order ID, we can join the table as is and get the columns that we need. But if we join, we need to do on. So on OD the order ID, because we want to connect the order ID with O order ID. The second thing we need to know, the order date belongs to the orders table and the max unit price belongs to order details. But the order ID belongs to both of them. And in order to run, we need to declare from which table or which query we need to take the order ID. Because it doesn't matter, we have one-to-one or one-to-many. It doesn't matter. So let's take it from O. And now it will be okay. And if we run this, we see that we have one row for order ID. We got the order date from the orders table, and we got the max unit price from the order detail. We can write here the name of the tables, but it's not mandatory because the order date appears only here and the max unit price appears only here. If we add another table, another column that appears in both of them, so we have to add a table name. So again, if we have one-to-one, in order to create this one row for each value, so we use select. We have to use select from group by because it's aggregated field, create it one value, and then call it in a name and do from. If the table is already unique, already we have order ID one time, we don't have to use all of this because we can join orders and get one order ID for each row.